Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not sure you know what you expect, but we'll go for it. So, Sophie, thank you for arranging it. Lucky I had... there are two people in the audience who've already seen my presentation. But I've modified it since, so I can spot the difference. So here I am. So I, if you didn't know, was the PR Communications Manager for MG Rover. MG Rover is what we're going to talk about. Now, order. What do you notice on the screen already about the order? Had you seen it before? Do you realise that MG Rover, the spoken word, is actually reversed in badge terms? Oh yeah, I'm pleased about that. It's only my first slide, and I've got on. That's great. So, yeah, so it was just there to be fair, Rover MG. It didn't sound as good verbally, so that's why it's as it is. Can everybody hear me all right, by the way? Yeah?
Yeah.
Good. So here's what we're going to talk about, if you're okay. I'm going to whistle through slides, if you like, because it might be the longest day. We don't really want the longest presentation, but we are thankfully and courteously looked after by MG Owners Club in an air-conditioned room, so it won't be all bad. So I'm going to start with a bit of background from me, going to my career. It was even shorter. And I just thought, for context, in an MG Rover sense, you probably don't realise what BMW went through to understand better why they took the decisions they did. And then some proposals about the survival for us to be MG Rover took place, and then I'm just going to whistle through the events of MG Rover, which hopefully at the end of it you'll think, actually, blimey, did they do all that? And then I've just got a few little reflective thoughts at the end, just by way of a prompt so that I have to remember them. And if that takes 30 minutes, we'll be doing well. So I better get on with it. So this is me. Jake, there's a note there. I asked you the question the other day on purpose because my parents used to live in Kempston, and that's not far away from where you are in Bedford, and that's where the cobbled broken slabs are from. This car has got my name on it, and this car looks quite similar. There's a gentleman who got his name on it later. Well, not on that one, but you know. So Damon Hill on his christening day, we had all the greats around him, but it's remarkably similar. I just thought, well, there's an interesting parallel there in pedal car. But I was also lucky at 9 years old to grab a Kellogg's box and realise that you needed some vouchers to send off to tokens, but one of them was in the bin and was soaking wet, so I had to get it out, design the car of the future. Now this car of the future I designed was not too different from what you know as a Tesla today, the Cybertruck, albeit the front end. It's very wedgy and had a GT40 Porsche 907 type door on it, but it was good enough for Kellogg's to recognise that I'd got some design skills. Now, you know, if you want to be in the RAF, you want to be a pilot, and if you're into cars, you want to be a car designer. So I thought this would set me off. And I wasn't exactly very competitive, but you know, if you don't enter things, you don't win them. So that set me off with an interest in cars. Like I say, this has gone since the pedal car. But my dad was lucky enough to, they introduced J&B Scotch whisky into the UK, and there was a competition to see who could open enough accounts. My dad was successful. So for a week, we went to school in a chauffeur-driven Rolls Royce. The experience of watching this guy called Brian Connett, who was the chauffeur, would drive along, and then there'd be a Mini or something that came up behind us, and the moment he got to overtake, he'd floor it. We got to a village, and there'd be people looking out of their front window, looking at this Rolls Royce, and he'd reverse, wave, and sod off, you know. So he was an absolute character, great for him, you know. We took this to school, and I didn't realise that Rolls Royces had hydraulic type windows, so kids playing with the windows all the time soon got a flat, not a flat battery, but gave up and said, I don't need any more of that. But yeah, these were highly rewarding early days. Not going wrong there, that's right. So, coming to the point where you need to get an education, I left school and there were, what did I say, 2,500 applicants. I got there, it was a room for 40 people in a selection test. There were 41 people, and they said, well, we've only got 40 seats, who shouldn't be here? And there's one guy, oh, I should have been here yesterday. Out. So I was lucky enough to be one of 100 people that got a job as an apprentice. And I'd also succeeded, as I've noted here, I also got offered a chance to be an apprentice at then Chrysler, which was Ryton. But I thought the idea of driving or being influenced by a Chrysler 2000 wasn't going to be as good as the brand portfolio that, well, I'll talk about the names of the company in a second, but that British Leyland had. But the irony is that when MG Rover faltered, within 6 weeks, I was lucky enough to be the first of 5,000 people to get a job at Peugeot in my second offering of the job. Sorry, I don't need to keep staring at you. And then the other thing to note is, yes, this was, I go to work for the first week as an apprentice, and my parents go on holiday, and I'm left to feed myself, and there's a fair in town, so I blow all my £23 of my wage on the fare, but that's what kids do. Yeah. So, where did my career start? I started a 4-year apprenticeship, as I've just referred to, in a training centre at Radford, so literally over the V12 production line, all the suds of the machine gear and whatever. And then after a year I went to Camberley in the emissions lab, which was previously the Triumph motorsports operation, so it had all the bits in it. And in fact the induction for an apprentice in those days was to be locked in the boot of a TR7, which I can tell you there is a latch for that gets you out, and you wouldn't have known this if you hadn't been stuck in one. I went to the emissions lab, so that's what I was talking about, design and drawing things. So I was asked to take a design to Longbridge one day because he'd got an eye infection or eye problem, and I went in the metro, and I got to go into the design studio at Longbridge, and there was a car that had bulbous wheel arches. Looks like the Tickford Metro, but was going to be the MG Metro Turbo or something like it. Gorgeous looking thing, but it didn't migrate to being. But you know, young lad, cars that you'd never seen before in development was an exciting period. I went into the design office, quality control service. I also went into the stress lab, but it didn't look good on there. And the stress lab was putting special stressed plastic on top of, in this case, XJ40 rear suspension, which I can say I've had a hand in, literally. Sorry. I'll go to there. So my next job was to go, well, in fact, I was as an apprentice, the training officer said, have you done any interview training? I said, well, no, you know, I'm sure you're all right. And he said, well, I'll get you an interview for a job at the press garage. And basically, to cut a long story short, I made a fairly good impression, but the training officer I didn't see for 2 weeks. He said to me, I bumped into him, I said, who got that job? He said, oh, you did. He said, the problem is, there's another guy that's going to, as it were, he's a trade apprentice, he's going to lose his job if you get that job. I said, oh. Anyway, he said, the interview's next week, so I went on for it. Basically, well, I got the job, to cut a long story short, but I had to tell the guy that was losing the job, my new boss said, you go and tell him that you got the job. Hello. Yeah. So here's my story for you, actually, Craig, in a sense. My job at the press garage was as a computer operator. I knew nothing about computers, but I was a quick learner. So I was operating on these floppy disks. Who do you think had the same job at the same time, but at a company called Michelin? And you've all heard of him. Kevin Howe was doing the same job as me at the same time. But, yeah, so I only found out looking at this CV and realised that we were doing the same thing. We got him. And then I became the administrator. So the press garage looked after the press cars, the demo cars, the royal cars. We had lots of fingers and pies. I got to register every single one car. I got to put all the details in this one book, which I kept it. So it was a very good eye-opening experience at the centre of things. I might have only been the administrator, but everybody came to me, you know. So it was a great job. And then my second job was in the press, as a press officer in the company's press office, I beg your pardon, working for Dennis, that Craig and I both worked with. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. I could digress all day, couldn't I? So.
Many stories about Dennis.
Yeah. So, my first job in the press office, or one of them, was there was a lady called Lorraine Paramore. She was in motorsport, but she didn't have quite the passion for the job. And I was asked would I go along to look after a guy called Ayrton Senna in the Metro 6R4, which is what I did. Went to Wales. We spent a great day. Some of which is on YouTube, if you want to have a look. But the job, of course, got us into lots of circles and people. So here we have Zara Phillips, a royal, got lots of royal stories, and then Cliff at the end there. Now, if I just, you'll notice the name of the gentleman on the bottom of the press cutting here. Yeah? So Andy Willman, who also worked like Craig at Auto Express, sorry, getting a lot of plugs in here for you, Craig.
That's all right. I'll own them.
Andy Willman was only at Auto Express, as we now know, because he told the story for a couple of years at the bequest or the suggestion by Jeremy Clarkson. And this is where effectively Top Gear's roots sort of started. He went apparently to Top Gear, the magazine first, after this, and then the rest is history, if you like. But yeah, that was a great day. Of course, he talks about the stereo being rubbish and things, but that's Sir Cliff. But this liaison led to a very good relationship with Sir Cliff and the company. And I won't digress too much into the brand, but essentially I got Cliff to drive Mini Number 1 at the Queen's the Queen's 40th anniversary. And because I was pushing all the cars I could, so I tried to get an MGB of Prince Philip's in there and the Royal Rover for the Queen. I said, well, how about if I get John Cooper? I could get you John Cooper in the Mini Cooper. They said, oh, we'll have that. I thought, well, I've got 2 cars here and everybody else has only got 1. So that was a great thing, because I had to put the handbrake on. I managed to get to go. I kept the handbrake on to sort of, he was all keen to do rally sort of driving, and I'm thinking, let's milk this moment. This is the last time the royal families were together with Princess Diana. So yeah, I digress. Right, so as I joined the company, government owned, it was British Leyland. No sooner did I arrive than we're BL Cars. Within a few years later, Austin Rover Group, and then it came to being sold to British Aerospace, which was a transition of inevitability to being sold into private ownership, which came as Rover Group was sold to BMW. And it's that I'm going to try and talk about. With change brings responsibility. I was known as the head of the Rover unit, which sounds all big and posh, doesn't it? And it is. And it does embrace a lot of responsibility. As Craig again will tell us, PR isn't just about getting your cars in the papers, it's sometimes keeping stories about them out of them, and you are effectively in charge of its brand reputation. It's no small job if you think of all things that can go wrong. So yeah, I was quite happy with that title. So let's go back some years now, right? We're a time traveller. There will be a bit of to and froing, but bear with us. So we're going back quite a considerable time, 32 years. This photograph location you'll recognise. Sorry about the picture quality. BMW bought the company that they knew to be Rover and Land Rover. They knew there was a product called Mini that was on its way out, but they clearly had already got aspirations to develop their thoughts for that. And the RV8, which of course, again, is another brand that had been somewhat, not latent, but we've had the MG saloons, ironically. And then an RV8 was emerging. I suppose they would have done some intelligence to realise that PR3 and MGF were coming, but they didn't realise properly, I don't think, the opportunity that lay with it. My first prop, just to prove I brought it. So with BMW came a guy called Tom Purvis. Tom Purvis was head of marketing for BMW. He arrived in a purple 3 Series BMW, and I thought, really? But anyway, he said he wanted to give vision to the brand, in this case Rover, I live in an MG building here, to try and look forward. And what he was looking to try and say was, look, it's the centenary of Rover in 2004, we should be looking beyond this to think what Rover would be. Now, the reason I'm showing you this is we know what happened in 2005. Of all the years he should pick to look forward and be prepared for, the irony is that he didn't get to do that, but here we are, having been through that moment. So, this is just really for BMW's benefit in some ways, but the story with Rover Group and BMW was that for the first 3 years, things were normal and fine. But as an economy, and as changing economy with pounds that became, pounds and Deutschmarks that became euros, things changed for the worst. So sales inevitably started to drop. And you have to understand also that what was the product range that they'd inherited was being updated, so over time the 200 and 400 would be the 25 and 45. The greater investment was with 75. But they came to realise that as the economy was changing to their disadvantage and our sales were falling and needing a new product range, that they needed to make a decision. And it's important to realise also that in every department there was a German spy. Meaning to say politely that they had their hands on every department, so they knew what was going on. And as, well, Hubert was a bow tie wearing German. He was a lovely guy, but he was definitely an ear for them and what was going on. And I only say that because all these things came at a cost that Rover Group bore. It won't have been all that profit loss, but it contributed a lot to the difficulties that we faced. So, BMW got it in their mind clearly that as we arrived at, if you remember, at the Birmingham Motor Show, to try and expedite some government fund, like everybody else had, Nissan particularly, and why shouldn't they have a bit of it? But I'm not saying that it was made at that decision, but it was probably a broker of, we're going to have to get out of this. And if you remember the discussions at the time, and it was Peach's Reader, they clearly realised they would need an exit strategy. There's just a Google AI version of what the sort of currency difference was. The observation there really is that BMW walked away. We suffered, or had to suffer for quite some time, that period of time when it wasn't actually economic for us to exist, never mind BMW. You might not remember this car. This was the Rover 75 design theme, shown at Geneva at a time when BMW was getting rid of, or looking to divorce from Rover. Those of us that were there were hopeful this could be a sporty Rover, and the car has got a certain Rover attitude to it. I'll try to think quickly of the name of the gentleman, but they stretched the picture to give the inference of a distorted 75. So you can see that, and they've actually airbrushed a few things that don't look quite real, but I've put that picture in there because in some ways that is a beginning of what we know to be ZT in attitude. But 2 weeks later, literally just 2 weeks later, BMW announced that they were going to sell the Rover business, and they'd already got plans for other parts of it. All we were left with was the Rover brand, which wasn't strictly ours, but to use with permission, and the Longbridge car plant and a portfolio of cars. So they were going to take, well, I'll leave you to read it. So this is actually taken exactly verbatim for what was said at the time. What I don't still understand is how they mentioned 9,000 Longbridge people there, because we know it to be sort of 6,000. But the separation was never going to be easy. Those of us that were, can't pronounce the word easily, but two-peed, is it? Had no choice. So if we had no legacy to Land Rover, and everybody was going, oh, I've got a bit of Land Rover, I've got a bit of that, so they just went with Ford, those of us that were left had no choice. But actually, we had a better journey of kinds, because it was much more exciting to be, you know, as what became. So yeah, we went our separate ways, and it happened over a month or two. It took a long time, and it was a sad thing. You'd grown up with these people, and suddenly they weren't just your brother and sister, they were now the in-laws or whatever. We got, John Parkinson would have written to everybody just to say, look, these things happen, we've got to be prepared for this. We'll go with how things happen, we'll try and make every opportunity to sell cars as if nothing had changed, but we're in difficult times and we'll see what happens. What happened is that the Phoenix Fours, we now came to understand them, came up with an alternative proposal that when it got to the 28th of April, Alchemy were feeling the competition for them was not viable for them. After all, they wanted to run it as a sort of a TVR type operation. And then, literally on the 8th of May, John Towers arrived at Longbridge as the unsung hero. It was a bit of a, he didn't really want this visibility, but it took his intelligence and command as an industry leader to make this thing happen. And with it was a package of requirements, notably of which Rover 75 would come from Cowley, and we'd exchange New Mini. I'm leaving you to read a few of these things rather than reading that for you, if that's okay. So here's John. That was a good day. He wasn't going to turn up in his own car. We had to get him into a Rover 75 rather quickly because it just looked like it was the PR man's job to do. But the important thing is here that, and we still think of it as, this company wasn't owned by us, the people, as it previously had been under government ownership. It was for people's company, and they could do with it as they wanted. Now, this is what they got. So literally it was just the products, it was the terms of the cars. It talks here about, this was an internal communication, and it was talking about how we wouldn't perhaps go to the NEC because that would save money, all these things that didn't happen because we did. Yeah, so I've just tried to, I don't know if you can read all that, but the point is that we would have the Mini for a very short period, but it would be going. Oh, too fast. That's right. So if you look at some of the detail of which, we've got the MGF, we've got spare parts, so I don't know quite what a special palette is all about, but anyway. But can you read on here how BMW thought of us in a derogatory sort of way? I've highlighted it for you. Anyway. It probably explains how we thought, but yeah. So we got a lot, but we haven't got a lot really. I mean, when you separate companies, it's never going to be easy. They had thoroughly gone through this, and to their credit, recognise all the things that would, in the short term, need to carry on. So, for example, Powertrain had to still make and continue to make gearboxes for the new Mini and things. But yeah, that's where we were. So I've just taken a slight deviation here slightly, just to remind people this isn't just me doing all the work here. There was a team of people, and everything that you saw and everything that we did took an awful lot of arranging, and we're going to flip through lots of things that happened, and it still baffles me as to how we did them all in such a short space of time. So press launches obviously needed arranging and routes needed finding, but our press office was not a big press office, and days that followed and years that followed, companies would have massive teams of people doing this sort of work. We were broadly a six-person team, and here they are. Now, this photograph was taken a year later, so there's Ian, Stephanie, myself, Sarah, Andrew and Greg. We have John Sanders and David Jones, no relation. So John was looking after UK marketing, very can-do sort of guy, and David was what became MG Sport and Racing, and of course the Atomic Kittens were just an extra incitement to get you going. But we spent time with them, they were good fun. Oh, I'm pressing that against it, sorry. So here we have all we got. We've got a Mini that we're going to have for months, and we've got a new, well, we know it not to be completely new, but a Rover 25, a 45 and a 75 and an MGF.
You've got two of them.
Well, there you are.
You've got that and a 75.
You need the full set.
I think I've got a full set.
I'll make up many times over. I'll also draw your attention to the fact that the photograph I'll come to in a few minutes has got the elephant house in a future sense, because it was taken later, but stick with me, because this was an open plan operation at that time. So we had to get busy with what we've got. So in the few months that followed, we were trying to find anything as a good story. I quite like this one, because it was the Olympic special editions we did on the track, and there were some nice photographs taken of that. We were talking earlier with somebody about a wedge. Oh, Don was talking about a Wedgwood MGF. Quite a rare breed car, really, but the 45 with a 2-litre engine, V6 in it, was quite a thing. And then being PR man, you wanted to do a story for X-Rage, which was different, but it looked like a congestion for trouble, doesn't it? So whilst all that was going on, cleverly, Rover 75 had been stockpiled bodies so that we continued build when it arrived at Longbridge, and then in the reverse journey, Mini was travelling south to Cowley. Now, MG Rover Group. It wasn't MG Rover Group from the beginning, it was MG Rover Group from September, because we were going to lose Mini and we were going to get Rover 75. But with a new name comes problems. Now, if you were to ask me with the benefit of hindsight, I would never give a company name with brand relationship, because a trouble with one of those cars or problems becomes a problem for the company, and more likely, actually, your business problems benefit your brand's pro rata. So no reason why, no wonder why British Airways became BA, why British Leather became BL, and why Stellantis in the modern world has all these brands underneath them, and whatever they do at the top doesn't affect those at the bottom. There's a bit of learning for you. But with a new company name comes a new credit card, a new business card. and quite nicely, it's nice to have the brands on there. But of course, anything that changes is going to mean you're going to need a new business card. There's a bit of wind at Longbridge, and with that wind, we got a new look. So we've got these kind of motorway-like edging, which at the time we thought, that's a bit scary, and it's taking up 3 cars, why would you do that? But actually, we came to warm to this refresh look for Longbridge, and it kind of did need it because we need to sort of have a little footprint while we're there. This is
now.
well, yeah, that's a shame, isn't it?
Yeah.
But this photograph was taken, as I say, a year or so from when I'm talking about, because there's an MG hiding in the edge there. But it was a good time and a good feel, and it was appropriate and where some of the money went. So we had to say goodbye to the Mini. The importance of this moment really was the transition of the two, and I got to drive that Mini to Blackpool to celebrate an event and things. So, yeah, the Mini and its importance was not wasted on us. We had a great number of journalists that attended that event, and it really was, it was a long day. It was 5 o'clock in the morning, and middle of the day with my kneecaps shaking, doing an interview at 6 o'clock. Here I am. Can you see me? Oh look, he's working. And then it's goodbye to the Mini. Oh, goodbye. Oh, sorry. Too much time on my hands. So I thought it was December, but it was the 30th of November when we announced we've got plans. So we'd already had in June the arrival of Rob Aldaker, and then July was Peter Stevens. And I mean, we thought with the arrival of Peter Stevens, who stood on this exact spot, was a momentous occasion for us to have such an understood expert in design. There were lots of people behind the scenes, but clearly under Rob's leadership, X10 as the code name, was a very important vehicle. Although, we could all see the Rover in it, but really it's what's under the skin that was more important. So, just summarising on what the year 2000, I mean, it's only been 8 months for us. For most of us, we've had a trauma of existence, but we tried to achieve a lot in that time, and most importantly, we won the support of the British press, the British car buying public. For the cynics, I'm not talking about the motoring press here, I'm talking about the corporate giants of the newspapers in London. They still were pessimistic and not believing of our likely existence. And then, it's only 8 months again, but the point I really want to draw your attention to is we had cash. We had 3.29 million with another 200 promised to come along. We had decent sales, but they were still reduced under the BMW time. And our losses that were, in brackets there, from 780 have been much reduced. Now, whether that's Rover Group and Land Rover, of course, that might be a distortion of the economics of things, but nevertheless, these were the official figures, so it might well have been separated. And then even from that time, they were talking about a premium MG Coupe. What the hell was that? Well, of course, we knew that to be what became X80 into SV, and the Roadster MG F, or TF as we came to know. Another prop moment. My loft is a funny place. It's a bit like Craig's car park, but I've still got my jacket. There's a reason why I kept it, I'm sure, and this was it. Have I misunderstood that? Sorry. Yeah. So this is Donington, my backyard. This is where I live, and that was London. So to come from nowhere, obviously the trophy had the big AP brakes, and boy did it stop. It felt like a good moment. We got no kind of vision of the greatness that was about to come, although this was quite a good moment, and it was of course 1.6 as well, the entry model. And then I did these in this order because it didn't look silly. It looks stupid to have the trophy there before we've announced it, but in truth, the trophy got announced in January. We were briefing people about the Z cars from February, and then we launched that event as a press launch in March. So we had the prospect then of the Z cars. They were well briefed, and in fact there's an awful lot of specification that was revealed and given in January, leading up to what would follow to be a press launch. And I'm saying that because when we came to that launch, a lot was known. We didn't need to brief people because actually they knew all about it, albeit they hadn't seen them for themselves. Oops, sorry. Now we did also promise that there would be this different structure, a structure with an entry model, a core model, ultimates and extremes, and whatever they would be. We had visions but didn't know ourselves necessarily. Just trying to move this cursor. So here we are back at the old look of the roundhouse. Now, the MG model range, to see how you can expand it, well of course I've got every car by model name, although the ZTT is the ZT, I know, but that makes a 5 model range. And pro rata for the Rovers, slight different spin. I've got a saloon and a hatchback 45, and obviously a hatchback in a 25 could have been a 3 and a 5 door, but you wouldn't spot any difference. But with the with the Rover 75 Tourer just being launched, or about to be launched, you've got a 5 model range. So 5 and 5 makes 7. So we've got alternatives here now. So the 75 is a Tourer when it's not a ZT. It's a 4-door when it's not a hatchback. It's a 3-door because it's an MG and it's a 5-door and a Roadster, if you follow. So I'm just really trying to illustrate a lot of thought went into this. So, yeah, we were told about being going to most shows, and the best thing about having the Z car suddenly, I was back at Geneva. Now, Geneva was such a fantastic place. It was the beginning of the year, you're on independent soil. Richard at the back there has been there a few times. So yeah, it was a very proud moment that we got to be there with these cars. And it really was also a moment where we silenced a lot of our critics. But when you've got intelligence, by which I mean the colour of a Typhoon car in your back pocket, you'll know what tie colours are there. Yeah. I have got that badge in my bag, but I'm not bothered to get it out, since you can see it. Right, so MG Sport and Racing needed a brand of its own. I only found this out in the last week, that MG Sport and Racing's X-Power brand. Now it could be that the press didn't know, or we didn't know, but it was actually going to be X space power. So it seems to me to make logical sense it's X power like that, but it was just going to be X and power, and I didn't realise this until a week ago because it'd been lost in my mind. So there you are. There's a little scoop with it. Right. So we'd long and helped by David Knowles, who kept a register of X experimental cars, which is where the X of X power came from. Important to show you. So when we knew we were going to do, and this was 1998, a land speed record car with Andy Green, I thought, well, if I backpedal the allocation of EX numbers to the EXF, which is the Bonneville car, the Super Sports that Jerry did, the red car photographed at Donington, if I reversed them, I could have a 255 as the 255 mile an hour EX255, which is why I got to this. And I'm leading on to the fact that later, of course, you get 257, so I can say I named that car. And we'd already declared, it was if one motorsport activity wasn't enough, we were going to do 3. So we had the 258 for rally and track with ZR, and we also had the 259 for the touring cars. Is everybody right so far? Yes, sorry. Yeah. Just like to check. But then it also meant that 257 here and others that followed would also get the authentic EX register. And I'm only showing you that as just another example of the fact that there was a lot of depth of thought and continuity that went on to design things. So we've taken a breath, we briefed everybody about Z cars. In May we launched Rover 75, and for economy we did out of Longbridge and went into the lower parts of the Evesham area. Good car. In June we were off to Le Mans. This is a car that had only run 1 hour before it got to Le Mans. It was a 24-hour race. It didn't finish, unfortunately, but it did get in some very quick times. But I got to sit in the back room, writing down what the interviews had taken place downstairs in a very noisy room with some smelly cheese. But we all have our jobs to do. And here we are in Wales. Now, in 2 weeks' time, I'm not sure any of you are available or coming or plan to, and if you're not, you need to act quickly, but we're off to Wales to reenact 25 years ago exactly at this event, which is why I'm not going to talk about it much, because you need to be there. Yeah. So there's still time if you want to come. So, literally months later, here I am at what is, it's Arrows, about the Formula 1 operation of Arrows in Milton Keynes, photographing a prototype. I've just been given 1 hour. This is a clay model. It doesn't wheel very fast, and with a bit of authentic photography you can do things. I took some snaps, as you do, and here's my snaps. That's that one bend, Bob, that's all we had. You couldn't really move it. You can move it forward and back and turn it around, but it was a clay. And there's the fellow that it was based on, and you can now see, you could have seen yourself before and you probably have realised, that the shape of the car is quite similar perhaps to the Mangusta. The Mangusta, the agreement of which was signed when we went to Le Mans. So we then now get to Frankfurt. The date of significance you'll all remember, you know where you were that day. So this is the 385, it's going to be the ultimate vehicle. Who wants to buy one? Now, I apologise for this, because I found this photograph and was delighted by it, but I do realise it's a Monogram Mark II, so I've quickly put in this morning pictures of my car, since it's here, in the car park. John, at this time there was a change in the PR operation a little bit, and John Edwards said to me, if you want a monogram, just let me know. I'm thinking, oof. And sorry, this is some time beyond, because of course I've just put these bits in, this is the facelift car, but he actually allowed me to have a monogram car without paying for it. And I was talking about the £2,000 paint job. And I went for what I thought was a masculine look colour rather than the purple flips and things, but yeah, thoroughly enjoyed ownership of that car. So back at Frankfurt Motor Show, we got X80, and we all know what happened next. What happened next?
It melted.
Well, yeah, exactly, thank you. Before the Twin Towers. So yeah, it just got too hot, and so we had to withdraw its visibility at times just to keep it. It wasn't a clay model; it's probably like and it was very hot. So even to remember those days, we went to the Land Rover stand, and were walking in the river of water because it was the only cool place. But yes, tragically, there were events that were going to affect us all. I spent the night with Peter Stevens and John Sanders, and all we could talk about was what was happening in world events. But everybody had just literally left the Mud Show. Just trying to get out of the place in any way they could. At about the same sort of time, pre-MG was an attitude-looking brand, and I digress quickly about the Welsh event. But the reason we went to Wales was to demonstrate our attitude. So we didn't wear the MG octagon on us. We had MG initials, a bit like the new version out here. It was just a way of getting a departure from the octagon, the original normal MG. We wanted new business. So the octagon took it was on the car, but it was in promotional terms, the MG letters. The press pack was green and red, more likely because red and green should never be seen. And it was a way of being an attitude of aggression or awareness at least. And so the advertising, since we're on this page, was also done to be more about inclination of speed and things. Now I don't know whether these were the actual ones that were banned, because there were quite a few interpretations of static and moving pictures, but we were banned, or at least these adverts were banned by the ASA, and so we had to bring in more static looking interpretations. This is a reflection of the touring car if you've seen it. But of course what followed was somebody else had got a better idea. So there is some bad language in here, sorry. I'm sorry they're not in any better quality, but time to move forward. So as we finished 2001, there was then prospect of our aims really, which was to try and find a suitor in the form of Chinese companies. All European companies were realising there was a shrinkage going on. There was more companies than there were customers, and well, quite rightly, we got a view on China, and ironically, how futuristic in a perceptive look was that. And just to also say that I can't remember such a busier time, and then when I look back at that time, it's just crazy to think how many things we did with what we had as a small portfolio and the activities that followed. Here we have now a demonstration of the fact that the cash that we had was quite broadly similar to the 325 or 336 there that we had before. That was a full year, of course. But the loss was reducing, but it was inevitably still a loss, so money going out the door. And we're now into 2002. We're straight out to, we'd already reckoned this launch, but we went to Faro. Faro out of season was affordable, great driving routes, a bit of sand on the junctions, meant a bit of tail-out wheel spin. On the recce we got there, and there's Sven Goran Eriksson with Nancy in the restaurant, and we are the only people there. I'm thinking, you know, royalty or famous people, because it was all, he'd just started with the England football team. And you see there an extreme version of a I think it was an F version, but it soon became a TF version. This car didn't really get to see much light of day because it was powered by presumably a Le Mans car engine, which I think was a 2-litre Toyota or something like it, or Nissan at the time, but then got to be changed by a Cosworth. But because it took quite a while to get it started, it didn't get out to perform very much because it was just too much trouble. But it was a fine and good-looking vehicle. So in Faro we had obviously the Z cars being promoted. It was my idea to have all these cars pre-registered, so every set of cars per colour. So we had red, grey, silver and green. Every set of cars there's one set of all those colours for Italy and Germany and France and those primary countries. A, because we're driving left-hand drive, and what do I want with a left-hand drive press fleet? But also it would have meant they could have those cars instantly, the press launch is finished. But of course, I had to come back because I had to get some recalls. So my efficiency idea didn't quite work, but it was there in the theory. And of course, new car, new business card. Do I just go to them? No, that's right. So now we're back at Geneva again. Now the TCV was a vision for Rover, a little lacking in the detail possibly, but one thing we did quickly was to go and buy a washing machine because it could fit one in the boot. So a Swiss washing machine was acquired. And the irony of this car really is it did actually have a pretty good idea of what the future would be for all of us, apart from us in the car park here, but every car being a massive SUV today was clearly where they knew or had a feeling that all cars would be going. It was slightly Vauxhall, is it insignia? Look, so it had a Vauxhall edge to it, but it was definitely a Rover. And then something we probably don't want to be reminded of is an involvement with Matthew Williamson. But you know, when you're not a car designer and you're a fashion designer, you want to go to extremes, and he certainly did. It probably wasn't our proudest moment, but distinctive it was. Of course, April was a moment where I got Anthony Reid, and I think this is the time when you came to Bruntingthorpe. These three photographed cars are in the wrong order because it just looked better. So he literally threw it in and then brought it back. But yeah, that was one way to animate the 500. So we're at this point now where in 2002 we've got the TF, we've got the Z cars, nobody knows of them. They don't necessarily all know because they're new customers what the MG range is. And they said, well, let's create a poster that's kind of cigarette, the cigarette packet pictures. And I said, well, just how many MGs have we made? So there's a book, the A to Z book of MG. Can't quickly think of his name, bless him. Anyway, it's got all the VIN numbers in there, and it allowed me to work out every number of car that were made in history. And I started counting them, and of course, I got to the point where I realised we were on the. I got a letter from a guy who owned the 1977 Silver Jubilee MGB, and he said, "Why don't you make a Golden Jubilee?" And I'm thinking, why would I want to do that? Anyway, after a while, I realised that we've got 1.5 million cars. I thought we've got a reason. We had monogram. It just happened that one of the monogram colours was Jubilee. Now, I'm liking coincidences, and when I get two, I think there must be a third. It was the Queen's Golden Jubilee. Now, they owned all the logos, I said 2002 in the crown, but to call this a Golden Jubilee MGTF would then mean that we might have to pay royalties to Her Majesty. And we just thought, well, if we call it the 1.5 millionth MG, we can do both things to celebrate it. So prop number 3 is the ribbon that got. You have to do this.
Somebody went to cut it, didn't they?
So there it is.
Still.
That's brilliant.
Been my loft ever since. It's first outing. And the benefit of what was that I got to go and see him then with his car and show him as a reward for him giving me the idea and solution that. And I've written the story. It's been enjoying MG. But we also got to then go down to Horse Guards Parade. So we actually got to go down at like 3 o'clock in the morning to I'm trying to think of the airport that's west of London. Can't think of it. We met there. Then we got escorted in.
Farnborough?
No, smaller. The one that's private where Diana came into.
Oh,
yes,
right, yeah.
You know, it doesn't matter. No. So we got then escorted all in as a car convoy down the Mall. At which point everybody is, you know, waiting for things, and we're feeling really good about ourselves. Got to go into Horse Guards Parade. There's a guy in an XJ 200 or something, the coupe special car, and he wanted to be last. I said, well look, I've got a car that's actually for the event, made up for this. So all these 2 corridors of cars got to go down the Mall, and we're the last car on our own. Now I've got my wife's painting stick, I kid you not, with the flag, and she's waving it. So I've got her pinned in, I've got the passenger seat forward, as you can see there. I've got her in the back bit. So she's standing there doing all the wave thing. I'm thinking we're going to be so on television, we are. But there was a bus with all the celebrities on it, and of course all the cameras went to them. I never even saw myself on the flipping television later. But hey, somebody took some photographs, and we saw Concorde Red Arrows. It's fantastic. And here we have Roger and Roche. I made this observation in my dreams last night that at the MG Owners Club, you've got to have an R Christian name. Roger, Roche, Richard Lads came to an event. Who missed off? Roger, Roche, 2 Richards. Richard yourself, sorry. Unless your name's Jonathan, in which case you're stuck. Unless your surname's Kimber, of course, which will get you in anywhere. Right, we'll carry on. So then we're off to Le Mans again. Well, that was great because this time they hadn't got their green wigs and things, but it was a riot. We had Atomic Kittens come with us because they'd expressed an interest to be involved and wanted to go touring car racing. So they sung us to our event afterwards, after we'd broken down. You'd think we'd have won it 2 years running. Honestly, Audi weren't even party goers compared to us. But to have the girls there was just an absolute riot, and it's fantastic. Just absolutely on the message of MG. And then we announced, now this is October 2002, that's when it was announced. And of course it'd be a year later to deliver it. So this is the Birmingham Motor Show. I've got the next slide is with Tracy. So I don't know how or why Tracy was so much in vogue at the time, but she just left Coronation Street. But it happened that, well, I'll talk about it in a second. So we'd also had royalty. We'd had the Duke of Edinburgh in 2001. We'd had the Princess Royal in 2002. We'd declared a strategic alliance with China Brilliance Holdings. Now in China, you've got all these companies, you never know who the hell you are talking to because they're all linked to somebody or down below. It's a bit of a nightmare. But the intention was to do deals and have an arrangement with China. PVH had now got the X-Part business. The L-Series Turbo had been acquired by Powertrain. So things were a lot more in our seemingly in control. And in this situation, I think Rob and Peter had been awarded by publications like Autocar. Losses are reducing, sales are reducing, but you know, we've got more money in the bank. What's not to like? So as we go into 2003, now Tracy Shaw had left Coronation Street. She was doing this pseudo topless thing in Cambridge. We thought that'd be a bit of fun for an MGTF topless car. She isn't topless here. I just literally moved the straps and pulled them down, but you had to wear a seatbelt. But it just gave us a little thing. Now, Craig, I think you've got. Is it you or is it? Our friend Mr. Adams has got a cool blue TF.
I've not got one, so
no, it must be. Yeah. It was a nice spec car. But yeah.
Also in silver, wasn't it, as well? You could have it in silver as well, couldn't you, with the interior?
Doesn't sound logical, but I think you're right. Yeah, they did these things. Yeah. Now, you all remember the story, I've got the news page, no, of Prince Harry here going out. So this isn't the one where he was wearing and brandishing badges he shouldn't. This is the one where he just got to go home a bit late. But it happened that I'd been asked to promote this car. This is the ultimate X-Power MG ZS. In that, well, not in that paper. I had a good relationship with Ken Gibson, but there was an Australian guy in engineering, Graham, who said, "Can you get this car in the paper? It needs announcing. It's all been pre-promoted and whatever." And I did it so quickly. It didn't meet with Kevin Howe's agreement, because what doesn't go past Kevin Howe doesn't get to go forwards. And Kevin came to see me. It's like when Kevin arrives, you know, either there's trouble or whatever. He walked past, and he's about to give me a right old telling off, and Graham arrives. I said, "Well, he told me to do it." So I was vindicated on the spot, which was good, because I had a really good relationship with Kevin. It helped having the same name, of course. But it did mean, unfortunately, that because he didn't like what wasn't invented in his office, it didn't get to happen. Now, it might have also been that there were other things that were a factor of that, even though it had been partly promoted. And it might have been, you know, manufacturing possibilities, cost, or whatever. But for some reason, it didn't meet with his agreement. Rover Group now has new badges. New badges mean? And you'll notice the products are gone because there are now so many, or at least versions of. Yeah. It looks good, doesn't it, on the outside? Now, City Rover, I took that car home once, as I did a Land Rover Defender once, where once is enough. And for all that is much said about it and bad, there are, well, it's down there with the, well, bad ones perhaps, but it looked all right. I mean, Peter had done a wonderful job doing some surfacing, but what you should understand is the Indica 1 was not that car, because this was Indica 2, but our friends at Tata were not quick to think, well, if we're selling millions of these cars in India, why do you think you need a better one? We knew we needed a better car for our market, but they were challenged to think, why should we be pushed when we're selling as many as we can make? But anyway, it was the seed of a relationship that, as I'll refer to later, got to see the success of another company, as JLR, because what we showed as British was important to show them that we could show them the way forward. So this is just a warning, so there's a Top Gear moment coming, of course. Here we have James' screenshots of him taking a car from a dealership, and here we have on the far side, in the book on that bombshell by Richard Porter, talking about the moments that led up to them having a go in this car. Now, even reading that, I'd forgotten a couple of things, but essentially, they'd had a car to appraise, but because it collided also with, in the next few slides, the announcements of the streetwise, which Top Gear instantly took a dislike to. They didn't see it for what it was, they saw it for what it really was, but in the marketing sense could have been. Kevin was, he came to me and he said, look, under no, your name's Kevin, my name's Kevin, they're not going to have one of those cars over one of ours dead body, and one of us is going to lose our job if they do. So we just, every time they rang up, so could they have a car? So we've had one. They wanted to do more time with it, but it's busy now. Now, normally, I'll tell you, you'd shift heaven and earth to give Top Gear a car, but on this occasion, we knew it was damage limitation and it wasn't going to happen. When you see this again, and I recommend you have a look at it, it is great fun. It's good television, and for all that the Top Gear ever did on MG Rover, as I'll come to, they did make it watchable television, albeit at our expense. This one probably didn't survive that criticism, but others did. And he did say, look, it's the worst car I've ever driven on this programme. He'd only been there a year. But he was right. The significance of this, of course,
Sorry to interject, but that really is saying something, because it was me that provided the reasonably priced car, and that was terrible as well. The Chevrolet Machete that they had.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they were awful.
Yes.
So the City Rover must have been worse.
Yeah. In the bit that Peter did, it was fine, but it was its engine, I think, that was very important, and the exposed screws. But what I'm leading to here is that with the 1.5 millionth, of course, sows the seed that makes you think, well, how many Rovers have we done? Now, it just happened again by a happy coincidence, I kid you not. And you know, I can show you in the press packs we did, where we accounted for all the cars. It was just a lucky coincidence that the arrival of the 5 millionth Rover was upon us. And this was another special monogram paintwork. The unique thing about the car, which could be argued did or didn't work, is that my suggestion, I wanted to put the 5 millionth coach line under the lacquer so you could see it, but it would be protected and not scraped off or damaged. But it did react with the paintwork, and it took them quite a few attempts. But anyway, it meant with a bit of royalty. Prince Edward came to see his mother's car as well. Yeah, she had two. She had one at Sandringham and one at Windsor. I drove one of them once and doubled the mileage. I got special permission from him to do so, but I digress. And just to reward his time with us, I also knew, because I kept the newspaper in my loft, that there was in the Sun newspaper a report when he had the loan of a press car Rover Vitesse, and he was called. The headline was Prince of Wheels. So I managed to find it, or get another copy of that thing, have it framed, because I wouldn't give him mine. And he couldn't have been more delighted, honestly. You know how people put on a face and say, oh, thanks, yeah, but he was absolutely made up with it. So that was a good day. So, Streetwise was announced. Nice wheels. Do they look similar? They're not the same, but I just couldn't help think similar as before, I'm sure. But we have a Clarkson moment, and the Clarkson moment was he didn't like it. He says it's only a jumped up car. With a few bits on it and whatever. And we'd only ever seen probably the Rancho before it as an SUV. And okay, on the face of it, he was right, but he wasn't, because look at all the cars that followed to show that Streetwise was a vision of the future. What was brave on the Rover's part was we put into commission the bumper and the rear side rubbing strips with the word Streetwise, before or at the same time as we'd asked BMW if we could have a Rover with this name with it. It had to go to them because they own the brand. And it wasn't always guaranteed they'd say yes, because there's only so far you can push them. But it did fortunately come through, and we got to do it, because otherwise we'd have had bits of plastic we wouldn't know what to do, and we paid a small amount of money for them. Now, when this car arrived, it was already 2 years late. What we didn't quite understand at the Fireface side of the press office was that this car had to be launched, and it had to be launched quickly, because the 1,000 or so engines they'd bought, the type approval of which was going to run out. So I said, well, hang on, it would make a perfect 2004 model year look car as a hero car. No, got to get them out now. So we went to Donington, which is where we did the MG trophy car, and I desperately wanted, since I got a bit of the ASA thinking in my head, you're not allowed to do fast-looking shots. I desperately wanted to show pictures of the car doing what it might, or it should be capable of, tail spinning, whatever. So these were static shots with a bit of digital photography, which was just coming into the fore at that time. My favourite shot was and if you're familiar with it, do you remember the TR7 takeoff countdown? That was my shot, and this was over the old bridge at Donington. This shot is my arm. Much used in diesel car, because it's actually going through the old hairpin up the hill the wrong way around. You're looking at the person that's driven around Donington the wrong way around and Le Mans the wrong way around. But anyway, I digress. So yeah, great fun doing those photographs, but of course it did rain because it's in England. And goodbye to you. And then the reason it was most delayed is it had been assigned to ProDrive to develop. They had a problem with tramping, which is ironic because the RV8 was a car that was designed to not have anti-tramp capabilities, so why it was so difficult for this, but it was quite an engineering challenge, not least to find a way of putting your exhaust through. But the main delay was that ProDrive struggled to stop the anti-tramp behaviour of the vehicle. Now when I saw the car, even as a prototype, coming out of what was then, or formerly our press garage, but then became MG Sport and Racing, the guys would literally tear up the track, or the tarmac, because it was a capable car when it was all put in the right shape. So a formidable vehicle. But of course there's somebody that, this is a press car. So we did 2 weeks of 2 cars with journalists. We drove from my backyard near Lutterworth through some beautiful country lanes I knew. And I had name? Sorry, the touring car driver that I just showed a picture of, as my passenger. He didn't want to drive. I'm thinking, here's me driving him. And then, so that was 2 weeks where we were tearing some rubber. And then I had Mark Blundell go to Kerborough to drive the car. He spun it on this bend, and then recovered, did another one. And he said, do you know what? He said, if I had a Ferrari here, I'd have had to have new clutch, new brakes, and new tyres by the time I've pissed it out doing all this. Your car's been on the press launch and it's still doing it. This actual same car, I would go and follow to work sometimes because somebody bought it and there it was in front of me. And I so wanted to sort of stop them and tell them, do you realise what your car's been through? But there's another one, and this is a Jeremy Clarkson moment. Now, we're taking ourselves from the original look to a time when he had my favourite car, and doing what we know to be I'm sorry, these are only screen grabs, so the quality of the pictures are not too good, but this car we took up to Scotland, and it was just a gorgeous specification car. I'm pretty sure it was Aurora V8. It was, you know, I had it in my hands, I looked after it as it was my own, but there he is, shaking the tyres on it. But he liked it. Albeit, if you remember the piece, I looked at it the other day, he talks how everything's bad, doom and gloom, and wide road and all this sort of thing. But then, of course, it's up for a bit of wheel spin, and he's suddenly a fan of it. Bless him. The real reason for showing this photograph is that what the hell is a thunderstorm? I thought that, and then I saw one, and I thought, oh, if I photograph that, and I did, and that's what I photographed. So we superimposed which is why the car's got the same photograph background, because that is what I thought is a sunstorm. Now, this is quite an accomplished car. I tried to find it the other day, it wasn't successful, but at Myra they put a hybridised version. So you've got the perfect situation where a rear-driven car can then have a subsequent effective four-wheel drive system by being electric driven at the front. So it's very much a today thinking type vehicle, ahead of its time, and a massive electronics box under the bonnet. But yeah, it was quite clever, and of course it could drive in ecos, as in battery, or it could drive as full performance four-wheel drive. Here we are, we've got an SV to drive now. So it's taken a while, it's now on sale in October. That's exactly a year after we showed it. Another Clarkson moment coming up. Again, so he trashed us by talking about this car, talking about men from Longbridge or something, and then liked it, and then of course it hit him. And if you remember, if you do see that piece again, the times they repeat it is crazy, because of course Richard's happy that he smacked his head. But yeah, this was a car that was unregistered. It was the time of my arrival at MG Sportsman Racing. So you know, it was going on whilst I was there, but it was odd that they gave a car that wasn't actually road registered, but it might have been intentional. So 2003, that's, you know, rushing through these, it's the fourth year. Lots of achievements. Even got the most beautiful cabriolet. Losses are reducing again, and we've still got cash in the bank, but they're all going in a southerly position. But we know, or how could we know? We go to work every day thinking, have we still got a job? That was the feeling. We chose to celebrate the 80th anniversary, recognising MG to being 1924, fully appreciating that the bones of Cecil Kimbrough had started in 1923, but to our understanding, badging of such wasn't till that year. Now, it's a contentious story, we'll pass over it, but these were my celebration vehicles and remain so. Monogram, a later version of. Again, Monogram wasn't necessarily fully appreciated at the time, and you had the Typhoon cars and you had Mark 1 Monogram, but they've become and remain, whilst the lacquer stays on anyway, cherished cars. We took the Rover V8, I always wanted a Rover V8, to Geneva, going back there, had Matthew Pinsent be the British celebrity that we took there, got him in a car and around Geneva, so got a good relationship going with him and the corporate PR lady that got his phone number. So literally a few months later, and he's doing, there was a time when I think his, I'm trying to think of these, what's his name, the Rover, that got his fifth one, but it was left to Matthew to do it on his own for Britain. And because I got his phone number, as soon as he'd achieved his gold medal, I thought, do you know what, it'd be a decent thing. I'll text him and congratulate him. And he came straight back. Now we're talking, I swear, it wasn't 15 minutes or half an hour. And I felt so good that he'd come back to me. Well, the truth of it was, he'd come back to me because I was probably the first person that did it. But I got them to use my text to communicate to all of Rover, MG Rover people to say he thanked us for his gold medal. And I thought, well, good job I did that. That's what PR people do, isn't it? Take the opportunity. Going the wrong way. So yeah, V8 automatic, lovely car, but it was no MG. But that's important. Now here we arrive in April in readiness for the Birmingham Motor Show with a new look, a new cohesive look. I think we can say that. A new cohesive appearance. There's just one problem. We said we'd bring an ultimate car, but it hasn't got a cohesive look about it, has it? Now I went to Kevin Howe's office. He's, I kid you not, having fish and chips brought to him in his office, and I'm sat there opposite him. We're talking about the Birmingham Show. I said, look, the problem is that car looks like the old one, and there's us promoting all the new ones. He says, you're dead right, it's been delayed, hasn't it? And we'll have to stop it. So it's just as happened just like that. He said, no, it can't happen. And I felt, well, I'd like to have had a go at 385, but so when time is delayed and you don't move at the times and you can't do, and you blame ProDrive, we never got the 385. So it's one of those broken promises. We said we'd have it, we even put the advertising out there to have it, and it never arrived. And for that, I'm sorry. But you wouldn't have wanted no old look car either. So. But here we have another cohesive look. Here's the Rover, 2004 model year, and oh sorry, you have to get the streetlights in. That isn't the cohesive look, but for reasons that there is, that stayed like it is. It wasn't that old after all. And then we had the prospect of MG Sport and Racing doing some other activity as well. But they got better ideas, you see. They wanted a nice blue car that we've got in the car park. Don is my neighbour, and very fortunately this car lives literally 2 streets away from me, so I couldn't have been more delighted.
Yes, ironically enough, I did buy the uniforms they're wearing. They appeared on eBay, and I bought them. I'm not sure who was holding them for 15 years, but they appeared on eBay, and I bought them.
There was a lady called Suzanne Verdi on Midlands today who thought we'd named the car for her. We had Simon from Blue stand next to the car. So yeah, that was a good time. Nice to see the car and to be able to arrive in it. I got a new business card. All the photographs that were previously taken at Ragley Hall were with a view to a centenary in mind, so it seemed entirely appropriate that that location did in one day lots of photographs for this event, and lots of cars turned up. Leads nicely into November, when I saw this car being fabricated with a massive, it's taking inches off, I thought, the roof. But it was, part's been special as far as its fabrication, but for the purpose of showing to the Chinese that there was life in MG Rover. And where else could we go? There's only so much you can do with a certain number of cars, and we've done most things. In times when BMW were looking at us and they saw us do cabriolets and coupes and estates and things, was a reason for them buying us. This was, it was a good time, and Kevin Howe fancied himself as having one of these. And equally, the coupe was the alternative MG vehicle. I'm pictured in the SV, of course, but it was left-hand drive, so for autocar we were on the other side of each car. So, just as a gentle reminder, not that you need reminding, Phoenix Venture Holdings was not just MG Rover. It had Powertrain that was kept separate, Studley Castle that's now a hotel, Phoenix Distribution, and the Heritage Collection, and of course MG Sport and Racing. Now, cleverly in some ways, because it's the way to manage business, you've got to operate these things in isolation because it protects them and it also means that you've got control. And as they do change things. This is just a reaffirming what MG Rover Group was. Obviously, it was an independent British company; it wasn't government owned. But that just gives you an idea of what we were and how we were, and the location and where things were. So, as 2004 finished, bearing in mind you know what happened the year after, I'm about to tell you, Yeah, this was our last year in a proper sense. The clouds were always above us. Sales were down, but you know the prospect of working with the Chinese was our focus, and everything we did would do that. We had a facelift TF come out in February, and although this was announced in March, and I spoke to Rob the other day, he said he fully expected we would do this if all things had been different. There were plans to do DTM, which was a big thing. DTM was struggling at the time because they'd got manufacturers leaving their operation, so they were keen to have us. But of course, events had taken a turn. So in June 24, Shanghai Automotive Industry had signed a joint venture partnership with us, and it led. This was something back in time. Just to give you some context, sorry. Later that year in November, news broke the agreement between the two companies to create a joint venture company to produce up to 1 million cars a year with production shared. But however, this agreement had to be ratified by the Chinese government, which is accused of the fact that they've got quite a different structure of ownership and how things work. But it meant that they said, if BMW couldn't make it work, how could we? Well, of course, things had changed by then, but that was perhaps their excuse to take a change of direction. So now we are where I'm thinking, which is January 2005. Tony Blair, Prime Minister, intervened to try to show support to make this thing happen. And I digress slightly because there was, if you remember the DTI, when BMW sold MG Rover, the British government were involved. It was a bit of a surprise to them. So they took a bit of a dim view that this was all happening and were being very, very overcautious. They almost effectively brought the plane into land and almost crash landed it because they didn't want to cede a lot of ownership or make it happen at their expense, although they did contribute. So by April it was reported that the partnership with SAIC was in trouble, and British government had offered some money. I'm trying to do this very carefully, sorry. And then in April the company announced it was suspending production because basically they weren't getting paid. MG Rover Group and its sister businesses placed itself into administration, and it's pointed here that it's a different status from receivership. And then and of course, all this, whilst this is all going on, it's overshadowing the Pope's funeral, which is quite a big thing if it hadn't been for us. So sorry about that. So over the weekend, when we'd all left the building, and I can tell you that on that Friday before, I'd filled my car with lots of bits and bobs because I thought this was the last day. And Patricia Hewitt, the next one, managed to find money to perpetuate our survival, albeit for another week. So you can imagine what was going through all our time and minds. And here we are. This was Friday the 15th, which was the last day. It was the end. There was marches in Birmingham. I didn't go because it was sad enough. And yeah, the doors came down. Now, this is my perception of things. MG Rover Group, it was effectively a 5-year operation. Most of the critics said we'd be there for 2 or 3 years. I worked out, by the way, that if in work days, if I don't count weekends, I worked 7,000 days during my period of my career, which I've alluded to. And I thought at that point my whole life career was over, in a sense. I managed to get a job within 6 weeks, and I went to Peugeot and I worked there for 4,000 days. And I'm thinking, that was 16 years. You get to your point, your middle point, you think you've done it all, and you can do it all again, twice as hard. Anyway, sorry. So these figures, 750,000 cars. In truth, that is assuming that 2000 was the full year, which it wasn't for MG Rover. In fact, it's probably nearer 650,000 in real terms. But you can see there the depression of sales, which was perhaps inevitable because of the maturity of the vehicles. The Z car range clearly helped, and other cars helped to keep us front of mind. Can anybody guess what the proportion of ZR sales is to 25 as a ratio? What do you reckon? So of every 25 made, how many ZRs were there?
There were 84,000 ZRs over the whole period.
Well, it was 3 to 1. So for every 3, or for every 2, 3 to 1 would be 3, wouldn't it? So yeah, 3 Rover 25s to 1 ZR. ZS was 4-1, and ZT was or Rover 75 ZT was 5-1. I mentioned at the beginning. Yes, sorry. So that was about newspapers, and that was the job. I haven't bothered putting loads of press cuttings in here because otherwise we'll be here tonight. But in press coverage terms, the sale of the business by BMW was over a number of months, and was probably a greater deal of press coverage. But the completion of the Mini was by far the biggest event until the demise of MG Rover, which blew it out. I mean, I had on that last day, I had 2 reams of paper thick. It just kept, the poor old fax machine just kept going and going. I had to keep stuffing the paper. So yeah, sad times. It had to happen. So I've only just put here that as MG Rover Group didn't survive, but some of its platforms and legacies did. So Rover became Roe. Couldn't become Rover because it was still owned and kept by BMW with licence. MG has obviously gone on to greater things, and in fact crediting MG and the circumstance of time, but by being involved with the Chinese, the current car HS became the best-selling single model. Not the Mark wasn't the best-selling, but that model was for 1 or 2 months. To credit them, and also to credit us, if you like, or as MG Rover, for involving ourselves with the Chinese, because that legacy gave JLR their security, and everything seems to be happening under the control of China these days as far as automotive. We're being imported by Chinese cars left, right and centre, aren't we? Each borrowed this, click in my hand. So, okay, I was there, and okay, there's only so much you can do, but it was a very busy time, and I'm trying to do a bit of a Churchill quote there, but never did so much happen with so few. And it was without doubt the busiest time, it was the greatest time, and looking back, these were the best of working times. You know, if I got a phone call, as I often did, yeah, are you at the Motor Show? And I'd lean over and to John Sanders, and he'd say, yeah, and I'd say, yes, we are. To have a quick response like that, and we would do things in days and hours and weeks that took most companies months and years. It was a fantastically exciting period of time. And that's it from me. Sorry. That was a bit longer than we thought, wasn't it? I'm sorry, you're all hungry now. I hope you enjoyed it. If there's anything I haven't said or left out and you might want to know, now's the time to perhaps prompt a question. I'll do my best to openly and honestly answer it. Or have I done such a good presentation on the questions?
Well, one question for you, Ken. From the Le Mans times, did you ever work with a guy called Rupert Mannering at Lola?
No.
No. Oh, that's nice and easy.
Because you went to Cosworth, didn't you? Was it Scott?
No. He was in charge of the British Touring Car programme that I worked on at RML. He'd come from Lola, and he definitely worked on the MG.
So it's Chamberlain, wasn't it? And things.
Yeah.
So there was this relationship with Lola,
Yeah.
which came about when BMW was relinquishing us, and it was perceived because of Land Rover keeping Gaydon that we would have no engineering expertise. So Lola says, well, we can be your engineering expertise. They because it was Martin Boraine, I think, at the time, said, well, there's ways we can, and Nick Stevenson was there as well, so we got him as a concession of that. But what came of that was they wanted a lot more involvement. So the Z cars would have been MG Lolas. Yeah? But then they realised that this relationship was not quite as needed as would be the case, and to salute their involvement in helping us get moving, that's why we went to Le Mans, just to close in that sort of circle of thought. And Peter designed the grille a little bit more, but I'm trying to think of the name of the gentleman that Durney, is it? Frank Durney. He did all the work on the car, and an accomplished piece of work that was. It was a great car, just needed perhaps a little bit more testing and reliability. Great times, but captured the excitement of the moment.
It needs to be visiting as a feature, doesn't it, really?
It could do, yeah. Hello.
During the British aerospace period, Why was the brilliant Rover R8 series not marketed as MGs to replace the MG Maestro? You know, you think of the 216 or 220 GSI Turbo, for instance, would have made a great MG, wouldn't it? Why wasn't that marketed as an MG?
Well, it's a good question. I suppose at the time, Rover Group, Graham Day and all that legacy provided British Aerospace, because they'd acquired the business, and Sir Dick Evans and a few others were trying to sort of allow that to move. But I think they felt that Rover had more of a journey, which is why everything was Rover. They hadn't, the RV8 only came about because British Motor Heritage wanted to build, they got all the bits and they were making bodies, they thought we could make a car. And when that was heard of internally, we thought, well, not we, but those in power said, we can't have British Motor Heritage building cars, we build cars. So we saw it as a threat, so that gave a resurgence to what had been the end of the saloons at that time being Metros and Maestros, which had in the short term been long since gone, for RV8 to come, because they knew that from Rover 200 and 400 would become a legacy of the engine that would provide power for MGF. So some things aren't planned, but somebody upstairs sees the bigger plan. I'm not talking spiritually, I'm just talking, but things do happen, and it's just odd that they work. But the answer to your question is, Rover's the brand going forward, and it could have been a singular brand, and MG could have been lost like Triumph, were it not for circumstances. And we could credit lots of things along the way, but probably more so, which is why I wrote about it in MG Enthusiast, why RV8 shouldn't be dismissed, it's out there, as a car that did a lot to save, in some ways, MG, if that answers the question that way. Longbridge has been a brand user of lots of things, Riley's, Elves and all those sort of things, over the years. You can have too many brands, although in today's times you've got lots of better using of all brands on the same platform. It seems that there has to be a time and an approach, but the focus at the time was to invest more heavily in Rover. Yeah. Well, if there's any questions, I don't mind. We're all hungry, aren't we? I think lunch might beckon. So, thank you for your time. I'm just going to finish on one more slide. That's all, folks. Thank you.